Hello, and we're going to finish off week 6 with chapter 11. And chapter 11 is Managing Human Resources, which we have a certificate program for human resources if you're interested in going into that field. Mr. Powers is the person that you would speak to when it comes to human resources in our programs. Okay, so in this chapter, we'll go over the different employment laws that affect human resource practices, companies using recruiting to find qualified job applicants, the selection techniques and procedures that companies use, when deciding which applicants should receive job offers, describe how to determine training needs, and select the appropriate training methods. The next one, discuss how to use performance appraisals to give meaningful performance feedback, and basic compensation strategies, and discuss the 4 kinds of employee separation. Okay, so finding, developing, keeping the right people to form qualified workforce. In human resource management, you attract qualified employees, you develop them, and then you keep them. And you do that through recruiting, selection, training, performance, compensation, and then if you don't keep them, employee separation. Okay. So here are some laws. The Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938, the Equal Pay Act of 1963, Title VII Civil Rights Act of 1964, which most people use that to say if there's any type of discrimination. Pregnancy Discrimination Act of 1978, American with Disabilities Act of 1990, and the Civil Rights Act of 1991. Those are just a few of the big laws. There are thousands of laws, but those cover the huge changes or paradigm shifts in how the law affected human resource management. You also have then the Family Medical Leave Act of 1993, FMLA, I'm sure you've heard of that, Uniform Services Employment and Redemption Rights Act of 1994, and then the Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act of 2008. This law is used to stop employers from getting your genetic makeup to see if you are prone to any type of diseases or anything like that, because that would increase their insurance premiums for health insurance. So this law prevented them from having access to that or discriminating people for that. Any type of genetic information. Okay, labor laws regulate the interaction between management and labor unions. And labor union represents a group of employees. OSHA is supposed to be there for the safety of the people. A lot of people right now are wondering where OSHA is with all the meatpacking plants being shut down because of people getting sick with COVID-19, and many people have died that have gotten it from working in the meatpacking plants. The reason meatpacking plants are important is because that was one of the major industries that spurred the labor laws and the labor unions back in 1900, circa 1900. And again, if you read the book by Upton Sinclair called The Jungle, then it gives you a depiction of what it was like in that era of working at the meatpacking plant. And even though things have improved, it sounds like they haven't improved as much as they should have. Okay. Um, disparate, disparate treatment occurs when people are purposely not given the same hiring, promotion, or membership opportunities because of their race, color, sex, age, ethnic group, national origin, or religious belief. Okay. Now, there are some ways that you can discriminate based on some of those things, mainly religion. Obviously, if you're a church or a religious organization, you can discriminate based on religion because that's the essence of your existence is you're a religious organization. If you are not, if you are a state institution or just a normal business, company, organization that's not based on any religious belief, then you cannot discriminate or have disparate treatment to people based on that. Adverse impact occurs when members of a particular race, sex, or ethnic group are unintentionally harmed and disadvantaged. I wish this would stop this because this is really driving me crazy. uh, because they're hired, promoted, or trained at a substantial lower rates than others. 4/5, 80% rule used to determine if there has been a case for adverse impact. Violation occurs when the impact ratio is less than 80% or 4/5. Uh, Impact ratio calculated by dividing the decision ratio of a protected group by the decision ratio of a non-protected group. So, in other words, if you have 100 employees and 40 of the 100 are a minority, um, and you promote 10 people, and 9 of the 10 people are not minority people, that would have adverse impact because it one person that's not a minority is not 80% based on your total employment. They would only be as it would they represent 40% of your workforce, 40 out of 100. So therefore, 80% of the 40 people should have been part of that 10-person promotion. Um, so that would be 3 or 4 people. So you would have to have promoted 3 or 4 people uh, to then represent it correctly. Sexual harassment, quid pro quo, employment outcomes depend upon whether an individual submits to sexual harassment. Hostile work environment, unwelcome and demeaning sexually related behavior creates an intimidating and offensive work environment. Okay. Hostile work environment can be for other things besides sexual harassment, but it does uh, qualify under sexual harassment as well. Recruiting, process of development pool of qualified job applicants. Job analysis helps create job description and job specifications. Written description of basic job duties, tasks, responsibilities required for a particular job, and specification of written summary of the qualifications needed to perform the job. Okay, so you recruit people based on the job description, job specification, to find qualified people for the job, and hopefully then you will recruit people that will be able to do the job better than other people based on their skills and experience, not based on anything that would be um, discriminatory. You can do internal recruiting through job postings, career path. ECU does that all the time. They send out emails every time there's a job opening to let us know what it is. The only problem with that is if it's internal, and you don't have a good mix of a lot of different diversity, um, then you're not going to improve that. You're not going to improve your diversity. External methods, advertising, internet job sites, career portals. I know when I was a operations manager at Patterson Dental, I had a position for a customer service representative. I put it on careers.com, and after 2 days, I had 177 applications. And it was for a high school diploma position. That's all that was required as far as education. And of course, I took it off careers.com because 177 applications for one job was far too many. But I did read all the applications, and I called 3 people in. And even though it only required a high school diploma, I called 3 people in for an interview. Um, and the person that I hired was actually an adjunct instructor for a dental hygienist hygiene school. that was right down the street, and she was trying to get in full time, but they weren't hiring full time, and so she continued to teach there in the evenings, and she worked for Patterson during the day. Um, she had a master's degree, and she was obviously the most qualified for the job because I didn't have to teach her anything except our computer system. And after that, so it took like 30 minutes to train her, and she was good to go. And she was a great employee, but um, she was working in a job that only required a high school diploma. Um, but that was my selection process and validation. Um, yeah, interviewing. The main part about the interviewing process that you really have to be careful with is that you keep it structured, not unstructured, um, and that you ask all the applicants the exact same questions in the same way. You do that to make sure that you're not trying to be biased towards any particular person or any particular type of person. You want to keep everything the same. Um, and you want to, these are the selection tests that you can distribute to see how they work. When I was hired at Patterson before they would hire me, I had to take two tests. They were mathematics, reading type tests, aptitude tests, as far as um, how I could solve problems. And I was told after I was hired that they gave it to over 100 applicants at that location. And um, all but four failed the test. So I wasn't against over 100 people for the job. I was against four people for the job because the test weeded out people because they couldn't do the math. There was math word problems that were intricate. They were detailed. It wasn't deep, extremely difficult math. It was just very detailed word problems that you had to decipher and figure out what the problem was actually telling you. So converting the word problem into a math problem. And then, of course, you go through the training. Some companies are better than others with training employees. Obviously, a lot of the problems you have as a customer is because the employee hasn't been trained. How and what to discuss in a performance appraisal. You know, what you want to do is not have any surprises. You want to go over things that both parties already know, uh, areas of improvement, areas that are excellent, and then plan for improving the areas that need improved as far as training, as far as different cross training, education, maybe some more time spent in those areas so that you get more practice. Compensation, job evaluation usually turns compensation, although now scarcity is determining compensation more than anything else. Um, why do people separate? You have voluntary separation, people quit or retires, as the other one said. Wrongful discharge, legal doctrine that requires employers to have a job related reason for terminating. Downsizing, of course, is COVID-19 laid off a lot of people. You might have early retirement incentive programs. That's what Boeing is doing right now to try and get people to retire. Delta Airlines said that they only need 50% of the pilots that they currently have. And so they'll probably be offering a lot of early retirements and incentives to get the older pilots to retire. And then, of course, phased retirement. Um, Functional turnovers, loss of poor performing people. You don't mind losing them. Dysfunctional turnover is when you lose the best people uh, because of either financial reasons or they don't like working at the company. And that is the end of chapter 11, Managing Human Resources.